These are the 8 most common reasons I see women move on from romantic relationships. Welcome to the very first episode of Mom.Lawyer.Divorced, a show dedicated to the legal, practical, and personal side of getting a divorce, decoupling, and then ultimately having a co-parenting relationship with your ex. I'm Taylor Casper. I'm a family law attorney, and I'm also a divorced mom of 4 kids, helping other women navigate the process of divorce with confidence so that they can write the next chapter of their lives. And a huge question that I always get as a mom, as a divorced woman, and as a family law attorney is, how do I decide if I should stay or go? And what I want to tell you is that no one can decide that for you. Nobody but you can decide whether or not it's right to stay or to leave. And of course, here with this show, I'm not here to persuade you to get a divorce. But I do want to let you know that if you're contemplating divorce based on any of the 8 reasons that I'm going to share with you today, or based on other things that are going to come up in future episodes of this show and this podcast, I just want to know that I'm holding space for you. And having been through this process before, you're not alone. So, what I can do though is today I'm going to share with you the 8 common reasons that I see that lead other women and moms to call it quits in their marriage, their romantic relationships, and head down that road of divorce and decoupling. And throughout, I will sprinkle a little bit of my personal story and what led me to my decision ultimately to exit my marriage relationship and start the next chapter of my life. So let's dive right in. Common reason number 1 that a lot of women decide that the relationship is ending and it's time for them to exit is that there is a major lack of emotional connection in the relationship. Having emotional detachment in a marriage relationship can feel like living with a complete and total stranger. This was something that was really hard for me in my marriage relationship. I just didn't feel connected. And in fact, I felt like I was alone for much of that relationship. And it wasn't until years after I'd actually exited my marriage and was divorced that I ended up reading a really great book on romantic relationships in adulthood called Attached. This is a great book. You should go out and read it. And it goes through the three main attachment styles that adults have in romantic relationships. So there's the secure attachment style. And that is what it sounds like. These are people who are very secure. They feel good in their relationships. They feel attached to the other person in an appropriate way. The relationships feel strong. They have a little bit more confidence about where things are going. And they're the easiest type of attachment style to be in a relationship with. There's also the anxious attachment style, which is a little bit more of my personal attachment style. And the anxious attachment style needs a lot of reassurance that the relationship is strong, that they are valued, they are found attractive, that the other person wants to be in relationship with them. And they have a harder time expressing that appropriately sometimes, and they can act out in what's called protest behavior. So if they're not sure if they're valued or if they don't feel super strong about things, they'll kind of push some buttons and test the waters to see if they can get that partner to draw closer to them. The anxious attachment style is also the person who tends to not say I love you first, not be confident in their decision to be in the relationship or start the relationship. They kind of let other people set the pace so that they don't ever put themselves out there and then get rejected, because that would be very difficult for someone with an anxious attachment style. Then lastly, there's the avoidant attachment style, which is a very difficult attachment style to couple with, because that person often is the one who pushes the other partner away. And this can be as severe as even kind of denigrating that person or saying hurtful things to them to kind of keep them at a distance, even if that avoidant person actually does want to be in the romantic relationship. The book was really interesting because what it went on to say was that a lot of times people with an anxious attachment style will find themselves coupled with a person who has an avoidant attachment style. And this combination is essentially a match made in hell. And a lot of people get stuck in this situation, and one person really needs a lot of reassurance and the other person's pushing the person away. And so those attachment needs are not met. That emotional connection is just not there. And that can really be difficult. It can be a hurtful thing. It can feel like living with a stranger. I know that That was something that I experienced in my relationship. I would really want to be connected and want to be attached and want to be emotionally together with my partner. And my partner had an avoidant attachment style and would push away. And so there was just really never any time where we could meet together and meet those needs of the other person. And it does, it feels like living with a complete stranger. And sometimes it can feel like there isn't really any hope in a relationship where you're not going to find your emotional satisfaction. Lack of emotional connection can manifest itself in a lot of ways. There can be little to no affection. There can be a complete lack of meaningful conversations. There can be emotional withdrawal. And sometimes that emotional withdrawal is almost used like a weapon. It can be on purpose, right? To kind of put that person in their place or use silent treatment as a form of punishment or what have you. But however, the lack of emotional connection comes about, or whether or not it's intentional or not, that is something that is very hard to weather and can lead to very low satisfaction in the relationship, such that many women do choose to walk away when they find that it's not getting any better and maybe it won't get any better with time. Another thing that can be super difficult in relationships and cause people to walk away from them is frequent and unresolved conflict. I do want to be super clear in my personal perspective on conflict, and that is that conflict is not inherently bad. Conflict just is. It's a thing, it's a reality, it's a part of life. There are going to be people who have, or a person who has one viewpoint and somebody who's going to have a completely and totally different viewpoint. And there will be times where that needs to be addressed. And that in of itself is conflict. With healthy conflict, that can lead to conversations where we can determine options, outcomes, how we want to move forward in a relationship, in a work scenario, or whatever it might be. But where conflict is frequent and goes unresolved, it can take a huge toll on that relationship. It can turn into constant arguing without resolution, where people start to keep score. It can send people into a state of uneasiness in their relationship. They can feel like they're constantly walking on eggshells to avoid this conflict because the conflict never has a healthy resolution or endpoint. And so a lot of women will find themselves living in kind of fight or flight mode, always on edge, either fearing the conflict or ready to jump into conflict unnecessarily all the time because they've got to get in there, they've got to win, they've got to get this thing resolved, where the other person maybe doesn't want to resolve it, or that's not their conflict and communication style. And because nothing is ever resolved, it is like constantly waiting for the next trigger, for the next fight to pop up over and over again. Persistent conflict can erode trust and respect over time, where maybe one person tries to engage in healthy conflict. Hey, this thing is going on. This bothers me. I want to figure something out about this. I want to move on from this. And the other person doesn't respond to that, doesn't hear the call to resolve things, to try something different, to move on. There can become a lack of trust from the person who is bringing conflict for the point of resolution, and the person who's avoiding resolution and avoiding actually engaging in healthy conflict that leads to a result. A third common reason that women decide to leave the marriage relationship is serial cheating and infidelity. Now, there are lots and lots of couples that go through infidelity and they address it, they rectify it, they rebuild from it, and they go on to have really wonderful, productive, long-term marriage relationships on into the future. They grow old together, they die together, what have you. But where the infidelity and the cheating is a serial behavior, many times there's not any way to move forward and move through it, because one party is basically saying, I'm going to continue doing this. And the other party is saying, I don't agree with this. I thought we were in our marriage relationship together, not having outside people coming in. Of course, infidelity can do so many things to a marriage relationship. It can cause the person who is being cheated on to take responsibility or blame for the cheating, to feel insecure, like it was their fault, to try to overcompensate. Or that person may choose to become bitter, have rage filled types of feelings and emotions because they can't understand where this cheating and this behavior came from. Because so many things can come out of that. There's also obviously a huge lack of trust, lots of feelings of disrespect, feelings of betrayal. It can show a lack of commitment to the relationship. So I think this one is really self-explanatory. When people decide that they want to move on from a relationship where serial cheating and constant infidelity is a factor. The fourth common reason that women decide to move on from romantic relationships and head towards divorce is substance use disorder and substance abuse. Excessive drinking, drug use can place so much toxic strain on a relationship. A lot of studies and a lot of conversation in this space by mental health professionals, by therapists, by persons who are trained in substance use disorder. Those studies often say that the primary relationship of the person who is engaged in substance use disorder is actually that person's relationship to the substance itself. That substance can replace the intimate bond with their partner, with the children of the person who is using the substances. One, there's the acts that get produced when someone has substance use disorder. Substance use can cause all sorts of erratic behavior, fighting, sometimes domestic violence, on top of the erratic behavior, any domestic violence, possibly sometimes harm to the children, neglect to the children. There's also financial costs to substance use and substance use disorder. Overuse of substances can cause people to do crazy things with their money, right? Spend lots and lots of money on their drug of choice. I've had many a client attest to the fact that substance use had destroyed their finances, that they get ready to go to the grocery store or pay the bills and find that the person who was engaged in substances had spent a lot of money either going out and buying drugs or at the bar or buying rounds at the bar because they're intoxicated and buying for all of their friends, spending the last $50 on alcohol at the liquor store. There's so many accounts of substance use driving finances into the absolute ground. Now, if you're dealing with substance use disorder in your home, I do also want to state that getting the divorce isn't going to solve all of the problems that you're having right now in your marriage relationship. The marriage will be over, but that person may still be addicted to whatever that substance is and be unable to break free from its use. And so now you have a different set of issues that have to be talked about and addressed, because if you have children, is that person going to be able to have parenting time? And if they have parenting time, how do we make sure that the parenting time is safe? If they don't have parenting time, how do we deal with the emotional fracture, the emotional toll on the child by feeling abandoned from that parent? How do we deal with your health and what you need because you've been a victim of this situation as well? And you have to do your own healing so that you can move on. So do note on this particular common reason that if this is the story, but really with all of the common reasons, that it is imperative that you go seek help to restore yourself and heal yourself from everything that you've been through throughout the relationship. The fifth common reason we see women move towards divorce is feeling like a single parent in the relationship. Feeling like a single parent when there's a whole other adult that is there who should be able to help you rear, raise, and care for the children that you made and brought into this world together can take an extreme emotional and physical toll on the partner who's parenting and carrying that parenting load alone. There's lots of bitterness and resentment when maybe your partner doesn't know where the kids go to daycare or what grade they're in school, has never cooked, doesn't know what size shoes the kids wear or where their clothes are at, doesn't do the laundry, especially if you're a parent or a mother who not only cares for the children in the home but also goes out of the home and works. That can be an extreme physical load. It can be very mentally taxing. It can lead to feelings of lack of performance at work. It can lead to feelings of resentment at home. And it's also true if you are a stay-at-home parent and your work is in the home, because if you're a stay-at-home parent and you feel like a single parent from the perspective that you're always with the kids and the other person is isn't helping, you probably don't even have the respite of going to work and being with other adults. So it can be very mentally taxing to not ever get any break from that and not get the support of your partner and feeling like you're valued with the care that you give to your children. I see this one a lot in Facebook mom groups, on memes on Instagram and personal circles, just people chattering around, feeling like they do everything and they never ever get a break. I know what that feels like. And I've had those feelings for myself before, and it can be so tough to not just feel resentment and carry that. So it is imperative for you, if this is one of your common reasons, you will still have this feeling if you exit the marriage relationship and you get a divorce, because now you will really be the only adult in the home. So it's really important to start lining up your A team, your sources of help, your childcare to get you that respite, that time for self-care, and all of the things that you're going to need in the future to make sure the children are loved and cared for, but that you're loved and cared for too. The sixth common reason, and I think this one gets a lot more attention now than it did even 10 years ago, that women head towards divorce and decoupling, is narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse has a lot of characteristics to it. I'm not a mental health professional. I cannot diagnose your spouse or your significant other, but what I can say are some of the common traits of narcissistic abuse, or a person who has a narcissistic personality disorder, narcissistic tendencies, are gaslighting behaviors. So that is taking things that they do themselves and projecting them onto you and saying, you do this, this is how you behave, and whether or not it's true. Lots of manipulation, lots of coercive control, really making you feel like you have no choice but to do things the way that they want them to, degrading you, making you feel stupid, less than, putting you down, even if you are a very accomplished person, altering and distorting your sense of reality. And of course, they can never, ever, ever do anything wrong. And if they do something wrong, you probably made them do it. This can be a very confusing way to live in your home. You can start to second guess what is real, what is true, what is right, because of the constant mental and emotional beating down that you're taking on a day-to-day basis. Another characteristic of narcissistic abuse has to do with the narc abuser isolating you from important people in your life, much like somebody who's physically abusive would, isolating you, distorting the reality of what that person said or did, trying to turn those family members and people against you, and always putting on a show or airs for people in the outside world, making themselves look like they're the perfect family man or the perfect husband or the perfect significant other, the perfect parent, and even promoting you as a wonderful parent, a wonderful spouse and partner out in public, because that makes them look great, and then waiting to get back home and give you what they really think. So this is something that can make so many women feel like just absolutely crazy that this is going on and happening to them. But just know, if you have suspicions of that, that you're not crazy, you're not alone, and you just need to get with the right therapist, the right community of support to help you find your way and what's true for you, so that you can navigate your life and your relationships going forward. The seventh reason, and I think this is a huge common reason, and it relates back to all the other reasons that we've talked about so far today, is an unwillingness to recognize fault or to change. A person who does not recognize fault is a person who's saying, I'm just never going to do anything more or better in the relationship, and this is what it is. That can be very difficult to deal with. How do you rectify things? How do you resolve the conflict, like we talked about before? How do you heal from cheating if the person refuses to recognize their fault and what part they took in that even led to the cheating in the first place? How do you turn around circumstances of substance use disorder if you don't think your drinking is a problem? So none of the other reasons can ever be fixed, made better, or improved if the person won't recognize their fault or refuses to change. This can lead to feelings of frustration hopelessness that this relationship is not going anywhere, feelings of being really resigned, kind of watching the clock, hoping the kids will turn 18 faster than they possibly can, wishing their childhood away because it just doesn't feel like this is going anywhere and it's never going to get better. And that is such a tough place to live. An unwillingness to recognize fault or change is one of the major killers, I think, of so many relationships because it really does take two to improve that relationship and get it back on track. The last common reason that we'll talk about here today, and I'm sure there are 100 reasons that women move towards divorce in their marriage relationships or decide to unpartner or decouple. But the last one we're going to talk about today is extreme financial stress, strain, and other financial issues. There are a lot of financial issues that can lead towards divorce, but there's a couple that I think are more prevalent others. And one of those is financial abuse. That is where maybe one person makes the vast majority of the money and they keep the money separate. They only allow the other spouse small access or an allowance. The other spouse isn't allowed to go out and buy things, use money for even household and child purchases, keeps the money away from the person, degrades them for maybe not earning any money or earning enough money, calls it my money, threatens the person with the money, and uses money as a mechanism of power and control. Something else that I've seen come up a lot recently is gambling. Going out to the bar, playing too many pull tabs, can turn into sports betting, can turn into going to the casino, can turn into playing the ponies. And next thing we know, we have people lying, hiding, cashing out 401ks and using that to try to cover their tracks for all the debt that they've created for the family. I have unfortunately heard of stories of women that I've known who had no idea that the home was in foreclosure because the other spouse had gambled or taken some really risky bets and ideas, or even sometimes poor business choices, and lost the family fortune or lost the family's money. And now there was really no way out. And the last thing is reckless spending as a form of neglect, basically, just really not just overspending on things that are important to the person, oftentimes substance use, sometimes other girlfriends or other women, and leaving the household in jeopardy of not being able to buy groceries or pay the household bills. And these can jeopardize a family's financial stability, their future, and just bring so much stress down on the household that it is hard to bear. So, those are the 8 common reasons that I see women heading towards divorce, making that decision to decouple and just really deciding that this isn't the life that I signed up for. And as much as I maybe want to, and as much as I maybe grieve moving on from this relationship or maybe want to save it, it's not something that is going to happen, tough as it might be, and as much as they might mourn the need to move on. Again, I just want to let you know that we're not ever here to promote divorce, but being that divorce is a reality that so many women are facing and go through, I'm here for you to hold that space as you make the decisions that you need to write that next chapter of your lives. Thank you so much for tuning in to this first episode of Mom.Lawyer.Divorced. And I want to encourage you to tune in again and listen as we roll out our future episodes in this podcast and in this show. We have some really great things coming up for you this season. So I want to make sure you subscribe so you don't miss more insights on navigating divorce and co-parenting into the future. Some of our episodes that are coming up include understanding legal custody, physical custody, and parenting time, financial must-dos before filing for divorce, how to choose the right divorce attorney, emotionally preparing for that big divorce journey ahead, and also some special guest podcast episodes, including one with a mortgage professional that's going to help you understand your housing options post-divorce, and a women's focused coach is going to help us understand ourselves, our life, the world around us, and how to create our future. So make sure you subscribe so that you never miss an episode. So that's it. That's a wrap on Mom, Lawyer, Divorce. And I can't wait to see you the next time.